What if you were a penniless orphan, haunted by a past consumed by flames, when suddenly an elderly billionaire offers you a marriage deal that seems like your ticket to a better life? But what if that billionaire was a maze of lies? What if his fortune was cursed with secrets that could destroy you? Evelyn Schaefer accepted a marriage proposal from Benjamin O'Connor, a wealthy and enigmatic man who pulled her out of the ashes of her miserable existence. But as she adjusts to her luxurious life in his gloomy mansion, she finds that the price of financial security is the truth. Doors are locked, papers are hidden, and Benjamin flirts with distance as if waiting for something from her. Who is Benjamin? O'Connor, really? Why did he choose Evelyn? And what is hidden in that mansion that makes even the air tremble? Evelyn's story is a dizzying journey of discovery where each revelation is a double-edged sword. It cuts the past, but also opens paths to a future she might not be ready to face. In this high-stakes game of marked cards, Evelyn must decide, run or fight. And what if the truth is worse than the lie? Get ready for a story where every chapter is a twist and every character harbors a secret capable of exploding the world you've just come to know. Evelyn Schaefer's world had always been a series of closed doors. Orphaned at 16, she bounced between foster homes that smelled of mildew and temporary hope. Now 24, she lived in a dimly lit studio where the radiator hissed like a snake and the walls bled peeling paint. Her part-time job at a coffee shop paid barely enough for ramen and expired yogurt. "How did I end up here?" she'd mutter, staring at the cracks in the ceiling that trailed like tears. Her friends? Long gone, swallowed by life's chaos. Her only solace? Nightly walks through the city's neon-lit streets, where she'd pretend to be someone else, a someone with options. But reality always crashed back in. The landlord's texts burned her phone. "Rent due Friday. Don't make me evict you." Desperation clawed at her gut. Survival wasn't a choice, it was a battle. And Evelyn? She was running out of bullets. Shocking secret. The universe, it seemed, had other plans. One rainy Tuesday, a stranger's envelope slipped under her door. Inside, a lawyer's letter. "You've been selected for a proposition by Mr. Benjamin O'Connor." Evelyn snorted. Typo, she thought. Billionaires don't pick orphans out of thin air. But the signature was real. The money mentioned? Unreal. Billionaire's last wish. The letter hinted at a final game the old man had designed. A game? Evelyn hated games. But the offer? Too tempting to ignore. What's the worst that could happen? She reasoned, tucking the paper into her coat. Little did she know, this was just the beginning of a twisted maze. From poor to powerful. The next morning, Evelyn stood outside O'Connor Manor, her Converse, sneakers sinking into the manicured lawn. The iron gates loomed like a silent promise. "You've got nothing to lose," she whispered, her breath fogging the cold air. Inside, the mansion's grandeur hit her like a punch. Crystal chandeliers, oil paintings of stern-faced ancestors, and a foyer that smelled of old money and secrets. His fortune, her fate. The lawyer, a man with a cough that sounded like a dying frog, explained the deal. Benjamin O'Connor, 82, wanted a wife, not for love but for presence, stability, a last-ditch effort to secure his legacy. Evelyn's job, marry him, live in the mansion and inherit nothing except a monthly stipend. "Wait," she stammered, "so I'm just a escort?" The lawyer shrugged. "A deal with the unexpected, Ms. Schaefer. Take it or leave it." She married for survival. The word survival echoed in her mind as she signed the contract. No love, no expectations, just a roof over her head and cash to breathe. The ceremony was a blur. Velvet dresses, a priest with a monotone voice, Benjamin's frail hand in hers. This isn't real, she thought, watching him smile faintly. This is a nightmare with champagne. But as the limo sped away from the church, Evelyn wondered, What's the catch? Because there was always a catch. The mansion's silence swallowed her whole. Benjamin's rules arrived via a butler with eyes like ice. Certain rooms. Evelyn's pulse quickened. Rules meant secrets. And secrets? They had a way of oozing out, like the locked drawer in her bedroom that rattled every night. Or the portrait of a young woman in the hallway. Benjamin's first wife, perhaps, whose gaze seemed to follow Evelyn. What did you die for? She wondered, tracing the gold frame. The mansion wasn't just lonely, it was hungry. Benjamin. O'Connor's study smelled of aged mahogany and unspoken words. Evelyn perched on the edge of a leather armchair, her nails digging into the fabric. The billionaire himself was a puzzle. Wrinkled skin stretched over a frame that once held power, eyes sharp as razors behind spectacles. You're probably wondering why I chose you, he rasped, voice like sandpaper. Evelyn forced a nod. I don't do charity, he clarified, lighting a cigarillo that turned the air acrid. But I do. Experiments. A deal with the unexpected. The contract, when it arrived, was clinical. No love, no vows, just a transaction. Benjamin. Wanted a companion to attend galas, a figurehead to soothe his ailing conscience. Evelyn would receive a stipend, a wing of the mansion, and when he died. You'll vanish from my will, he said, smirking, unless you pass certain tests. Tests. Evelyn's throat tightened. What kind of tests? Patience. Dear. Benjamin chuckled, exhaling smoke rings. Let's just say, trust is currency here. She married for survival. The wedding day was a farce. Evelyn wore a gown that itched like a lie, Benjamin's hand trembling as he placed the ring on her finger. The guests, a swarm of socialites, murmured behind silk fans. Poor girl, one tittered, marrying old money for a crust of bread. But Evelyn didn't care. Survival didn't wear a tiara, it wore invisibility. For now, marriage of mystery. Nights in the mansion were a symphony of creaks and shadows. Benjamin would invite her to dinners where he'd regale her with tales of his youth, conquests, empires built on ash, then retreat to his study like a turtle into its shell. Evelyn learned to read between the lines. The locked drawer in her room? It rattled every night. The staff? They flinched when she asked questions. Mr. O'Connor's past is his own, the housekeeper would say, polishing silver with fervor. But Evelyn knew better. Secrets didn't stay buried forever. Hidden truth behind the vows. One evening she overheard an argument. She's too curious, snapped the butler. Orders were to keep her distracted. Distracted? Evelyn's blood chilled. She traced the portrait of Benjamin's first wife, the one who'd died in a car accident, and whispered, "What did you do?" The mansion's walls were a labyrinth of whispers. Evelyn discovered a pattern. Benjamin's kindness came in waves, then receded like a tide. He'd gift her a diamond brooch one day, vanish for days the next. Testing loyalty, the staff called it. But Evelyn sensed a darker game, a game where every smile was a clue and every silence a trap. And in her locked drawer, something scratched. Evelyn's days fell into a rhythm as sterile as a hospital schedule. Mornings began with breakfast served by the butler, poached eggs that tasted like duty, orange juice as cold as the mansion's heart. Benjamin would join her, his presence a mountain of unanswered questions. No love, he'd reiterate, pouring himself a third cup of tea. Just companionship. Yet his gaze would linger on her hands, her laughter, as if memorizing a script, his fortune, her fate. The stipend arrived monthly, a fat check that burned her fingertips. With it, Evelyn bought groceries that didn't expire, a winter coat that didn't itch, but the money came wrapped in thorns. At night, she'd lie awake listening to Benjamin's door close softly. Another night of solitude, another layer of doubt. A deal with the unexpected. "You're too quiet," Benjamin remarked one evening, catching her staring at the fireplace. Evelyn shrugged. "I'm learning the rules." The truth? She was afraid to speak too loud, to breathe too deep, lest the walls start bleeding secrets. The mansion was a cage lined with velvet, marriage of mystery. The staff tiptoed around her like she was made of glass. The housekeeper, Mrs. Hale, would leave mysterious notes. "Beware the third floor." The gardener, a man with dirt under his nails, warned, "He's never been what he seems." But Evelyn's favorite was the chef, who smuggled her chocolate and gossip. "He's got a vault in the basement," the chef whispered. "No one's seen inside." Hidden truth behind the vows. Evelyn's curiosity gnawed at her. One afternoon, she slipped into Benjamin's study while he napped. The air was thick with cigarillo smoke and regret. His desk drawer yielded nothing but yellowed letters, a woman's handwriting, desperate and torn. "You promised," one read. Promised what? Before she could guess, Benjamin's voice cut through the silence. "Snooping's a bad habit, dear." The mansion's third floor remained forbidden, a knot in Evelyn's mind. But it was the basement that haunted her dreams. A vault, the chef had said. Secrets, it seemed, were the only things multiplying in this house. And Evelyn, she was starting to collect them, like the photo she found tucked behind a book. Benjamin, young and vibrant, beside a woman who looked strikingly like her. The mansion was a beast of contradictions. Velvet drapes swallowed sunlight like a black hole, leaving Evelyn to navigate hallways by memory. The grand staircase, a twisted spine of mahogany, creaked under her weight as she climbed to the second floor. Portraits of O'Connor's ancestors lined the walls, their eyes following her like silent jurors. "They're judging you," the chef had joked, sliding a plate of lamb through the dining room door. Evelyn didn't laugh. The mansion's silence was a living thing, a coiled spring waiting to snap. Truth buried in the mansion. Her room was a gilded prison. Four-poster bed with silk sheets, yes, but also a wardrobe that smelled of mothballs and a desk where dust danced in sunbeams. The locked drawer rattled nightly, its contents whispering promises. Evelyn traced the keyhole with a fingernail. "Curiosity killed the cat," Mrs. Hale muttered when she caught Evelyn staring. But cats had 9 lives. Evelyn had one, and it was ticking away. An inheritance of secrets. The library was Benjamin's sanctuary, a cavern of leather-bound books and the ghost of his first wife's laughter. Evelyn found her there one afternoon, a Jane Austen novel abandoned on a chaise lounge. "She loved Pride and Prejudice," Benjamin said, appearing like a spectre. His voice cracked. "We all have our tragedies, dear." Evelyn's throat tightened. Was this a test? A slip of the mask? Before she could guess, he was gone, leaving the book open to a page marked by a dried rose. "You were my Elizabeth," the inscription read. "Now you're just a ghost." Whose handwriting? Benjamin's? The first wife's? The mystery curdled in Evelyn's veins. The old man's true identity. The staff avoided mentioning Benjamin's past, a porcelain elephant in the dining room. But Evelyn wasn't delicate. She cornered the gardener during a storm, rain lashing their faces. "He was a soldier once," the man blurted, yanking a weed with fury. "Saw things, did things, built his empire on blood." Evelyn's heart skipped. A soldier. The cigars, the sharp orders. They made sense now. But why hide it? The gardener pressed a rusted key into her palm. "The basement vault," he rasped. "Find it, before he does." Before he does? Evelyn didn't ask. Some questions tasted like poison. She thought she knew him. Doubt bloomed like mold. Benjamin's stories of boarding schools and boardrooms crumbled in her mind. What if the gardener was right? What if the man she married was a stranger wrapped in lies? That night, Evelyn dreamt of war zones and burning villages, of Benjamin's voice ordering executions. She woke to find her pillow damp, the taste of copper on her tongue. Coincidence? The mansion didn't believe in coincidences. The third-floor corridor remained off-limits, its door guarded by a maid with a broom like a weapon. But the basement called louder. Evelyn traced the mansion's blueprints in her mind, the vault, the gardener's warning, the dried rose in the book. Secrets, she realized, were the mansion's heartbeat, and every heartbeat left a trail. The mansion's opulence was a slap to the senses. Evelyn would wander through silk-draped halls, her fingers brushing gold-trimmed wallpaper, and wonder if she'd died and gone to some bizarre purgatory. The walk-in closets, stuffed with designer dresses that itched with newness, made her feel like a thief. "Try this," Mrs. Hale would say, pressing a Dolce & Gabbana gown into her hands. "It'll look stunning on you." But Evelyn saw herself in the mirrors, a stranger masquerading in borrowed skin. Shocking secret. The chandeliers cast shadows that twisted into shapes she couldn't name. Late at night, she'd find half-empty brandy glasses in corners, their contents not Benjamin's. Who else was here? The staff's lips were sealed tighter than a vault. The billionaire's final game, Benjamin's experiments, bled into daily life. One day, he gifted her a diamond necklace. The next, he'd vanish for 3 days, leaving her a note. Patience, Evelyn. The games were maddening. She'd find clues, a newspaper clipping of a cold case, a train ticket to nowhere, scattered like breadcrumbs. "He's testing your wit," the chef snickered, sliding a plate of truffle pasta her way. "Or your sanity." Evelyn wasn't sure which. From poor to powerful, the power of a credit card was intoxicating. Evelyn bought books, real ones, not the dust-coated classics in Benjamin's library, and devoured them in the garden where the sun felt almost real. She learned about art, history, the stock market, tools for a mind that refused to stay caged. But knowledge came with a price. One evening, she overheard Benjamin on the phone. "She's adapting, faster than expected." The words hung in the air like a threat. His fortune, her fate. Money couldn't buy sleep. Evelyn's nights were a carousel of nightmares. Benjamin's cigars morphing into guns, the mansion's halls flooding with blood. She'd wake to find her knuckles white against the mattress, the taste of pennies in her mouth. "Night terrors?" Mrs. Hale asked, replacing the cold compress on her forehead. "Happens to the best of us." But Evelyn knew better. The dreams were warnings. The mansion was bleeding its secrets into her subconscious. A deal with the unexpected, the staff's. Gossip was a drug. The gardener spoke of a hidden wing behind the library, bricked up decades ago. The chef mentioned a lawyer who visited weekly, carrying briefcases that weighed a ton. And the housekeeper. She'd sigh, polishing a silver tray, and murmur, "He's not the first O'Connor to die under mysterious circumstances." Evelyn's fingers trembled. How deep did the rot go? She married for survival. Survival looked different now. Evelyn took self-defense classes in secret, her knuckles bruising against a punching bag in the garage. She memorized the mansion's floor plan, noting emergency exits and blind spots. Benjamin's tests had sharpened her instincts. One night, she followed him to the study and caught him burning documents in a fireplace. The smell of singed paper made her nauseous. "Curious?" he said, not looking up. "Curiosity killed the cat." The mansion's rules were carved in marble, certain rooms. Evelyn traced the forbidden third-floor corridor on the blueprint she'd stolen from Benjamin's desk. The door at the end, solid oak, a brass knob shaped like a serpent's head, called to her. The staff's warnings? They were white noise now. She'd survive this game. But first, she needed answers. And answers lived in locked rooms. The staff moved through the mansion like ghosts, their silence a language of its own. The butler, Mr. Hargrove, had a way of appearing behind Evelyn like a bad penny. "Mr. O'Connor insists certain areas remain private," he'd say, his eye tone a blade wrapped in velvet. The third-floor corridor was the forbidden fruit, a hallway lined with doors that seemed to breathe. One door, in particular, taunted Evelyn. Its brass knob twisted like a snake's head, and the wood felt cold to the touch, as if rejecting her presence. "Why?" she'd ask Hargrove. "Why can't I go there?" He'd adjust his waistcoat with trembling hands. "Some doors are locked for our own good, miss. Hidden truth behind the vows. The rules weren't just physical. Dinner was always at 7 p.m. sharp, no deviations. Evelyn's calls to friends were monitored. She'd hear clicks on the line. And every Thursday, a black van would arrive at dawn, whisking away crates labeled fragile. The staff would vanish during those hours, reappearing as if nothing had happened. "They're taking inventory," Mrs. Hale lied, her smile too wide. But Evelyn spotted the gardener loading what looked like documents into the van. "Legal stuff," he mumbled, avoiding her gaze. The secret will. Benjamin's will was a specter in the background. Evelyn had seen it mentioned in passing, a document that would change everything if triggered. The staff referred to it in hushed tones. "He's got a backup plan," the chef had whispered, sliding her a fresh croissant. "A deal with the unexpected." The phrase made Evelyn's skin crawl. What if she failed his tests? What if the will erased her from existence? A deal with the unexpected. One night, Evelyn followed Hargrove to the basement. He carried a lantern that cast shadows like skeletal fingers. The vault door loomed ahead, its combination dialed with practiced hands. "What's in there?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Your future, perhaps," he replied, not turning. The vault's contents were shrouded in darkness, but Evelyn caught a glint of metal. Gun safes? More documents? Before she could guess, Hargrove shut the door with a clang that echoed through the night. Truth buried in the mansion. The mansion's secrets were a cancer, spreading through Evelyn's mind. She found herself tracing the outline of forbidden rooms in her sleep. The locked drawer in her bedroom rattled incessantly, a metronome of doubt. One evening, she pried it open with a hairpin. Inside, a stack of Polaroids fell into her lap. Benjamin, young and reckless, beside a woman who looked exactly like Evelyn. The last photo showed them in front of a burning building. A headline. On the back read, "Tragic fire claims lives of socialite and child." Evelyn's blood turned to ice. She thought she knew him. The Polaroids burned in her mind. Benjamin's first wife. The child. A girl with Evelyn's freckles. Was she the orphan who survived the fire? The one Benjamin had rescued? The mansion's silence screamed confirmation. But why? Why bring Evelyn here now? The answer, she realized, was in the forbidden rooms. The vault. The third-floor corridor. All of it was a puzzle, and Evelyn was the missing piece. Benjamin's behavior shifted like quicksand. One moment, he'd pour her wine and joke about her detective skills. The next, he'd retreat to his study, slamming the door. The staff called it his mood swings, but Evelyn sensed a pattern. Every time she neared a secret, he grew distant. Every time she backed off, he softened. It was a dance, a deadly waltz where the music was lies. Benjamin's moods swung like a pendulum in a grandfather clock. One morning, he'd gift Evelyn a book she'd mentioned in passing, a first edition of Jane Eyre, its pages smelling of vanilla and secrets. "For your midnight readings," he'd say, his smile warm as freshly baked bread. The next day, he'd cancel dinner with a terse, "Note, business." The staff called it his testing phase, but Evelyn saw it for what it was, a game of emotional Russian roulette. "He wants to see if you'll crack," the chef muttered, sliding a slice of chocolate cake her way. "Or if you'll play along." Marriage of mystery. The ballroom incident was a masterclass in Benjamin's duality. He'd spent weeks planning a soiree, crimson drapes, a string quartet that played her favorite song, as if trying to court a stranger. Evelyn, in a gown that hugged her curves like a secret, almost believed in the charade. Then, midway through the night, Benjamin excused himself to take a phone call and didn't return. She found him later on the balcony, smoking a cigarillo, his gaze distant. "You looked beautiful," he said, not meeting her eyes. "Almost like her." Almost like who? The question burned, but the moment faded like smoke. Hidden truth behind the vows. The testing intensified as weeks passed. Benjamin would invite Evelyn to share brandy by the fireplace, his stories weaving tales of youthful adventures, conquests in Paris, a near-death experience in the Himalayas, only to vanish for days afterward. One evening, he returned from a trip with a black eye and a story about a mugging. The staff exchanged glances. Evelyn traced the bruise on his cheek. "You're a terrible liar," she said softly. His laugh was bitter. "We all wear masks, dear. Some just fit better than others." The Billionaire's final game. The notes began appearing in Evelyn's room, slips of paper tucked under her pillow, their messages veiled in riddles. Trust is earned, not given. Look closer at the paintings. Benjamin denied writing them, his expression a storm of conflicting emotions. "I don't play games," he snapped, though his study's wastebasket held crumpled drafts of identical notes. The staff's whispers grew louder. "He's checking your loyalty," Mrs. Hale sighed, dusting a mantelpiece with unnecessary vigor, "or your breaking point." From poor to powerful, Evelyn's power grew in the shadows. She'd hack into Benjamin's computer during his absences, her fingers flying over the keyboard like a concert pianist. Passwords were child's play. First wife loved books, she'd guess correctly, and behind firewalls lay spreadsheets of offshore accounts, encrypted emails, and a name that made her blood run cold. Evelyn Rose Schaefer. Benjamin knew her real name. He'd known all along. The mansion's walls seemed to lean in, listening. She thought she knew him. Doubt became her companion. Benjamin's kindness now tasted like poison, his distance a necessary wound. One night, she followed him to the garage where he stood before a vintage Mercedes, its trunk open. Inside lay a suitcase packed with cash and a passport. Evelyn Schaefer. Her photo. Her name. "Leaving me?" she asked, her voice steady. Benjamin turned, his face a mask. "Just preparing for eventualities." The word eventualities hung between them, heavy with unspoken threats. The mansion's heartbeat quickened. Benjamin's cough worsened, a wet, rattling sound that emptied the room of air. Doctors came and went, prescribing medications that did little. "Terminal illness," the staff murmured, polishing silver with trembling hands. But Evelyn noticed the way Benjamin's eyes brightened when he thought she wasn't looking. The way he kept a briefcase under his bed. The game, it seemed, was entering its final round. And Evelyn? She was ready to play. The mansion's air thickened with the scent of eucalyptus and denial. Benjamin's cough had evolved into a beast, rattling his frail frame like a cage of bones. Doctors swarmed the foyer, their white coats a blur of whispered diagnoses. "Terminal," they'd say, adjusting stethoscopes. Weeks, perhaps. But Evelyn noticed the pills, placebos according to the gardener, and the late-night phone calls where Benjamin would laugh, not cough. Business deals, he'd claim, but his eyes would dart to the door. The staff's nervous eyes followed suit. "He's buying time," Mrs. Hale muttered, her hands shaking as she poured tea. Time for what? Clues hidden in plain sight. The mansion itself seemed to hemorrhage secrets. Evelyn found hospital bills in the trash, forged dates, forged signatures, a pharmacy receipt for cough syrup, purchased 3 days before Benjamin's supposed diagnosis. The chef, chopping onions that did nothing to mask his tears, admitted, he's been faking it for months. But why? The answer, when it came, was a slap. One evening, Evelyn overheard Benjamin on the phone. The will's triggered if I die. She'll inherit nothing. But if I'm alive... His voice trailed off, but the implication hung like a noose. The billionaire's true past. Benjamin's past was a jigsaw puzzle missing key pieces. The gardener, now a fount of drunken truth, spilled stories of a man who'd faked his own death once before. Evelyn's blood turned to ice. After the war, the man slurred. He disappeared. Reappeared years later with a new name, new fortune. Said he'd been in witness protection. Witness protection? For what? The mansion's library held no answers, only more questions. A book titled The Art of Deception sat open on Benjamin's desk, its pages dog-eared. She thought she knew him. Doubt curdled into certainty. Benjamin's illness was a performance, a play written to test Evelyn's loyalty. The Polaroids of his first wife and the mysterious child, Evelyn's doppelganger no doubt, were clues. The mansion's locked doors, the staff's veiled threats, they all fit. Benjamin wanted to see if she'd fight for him or flee with his money, but Evelyn wasn't playing his game anymore. Or was she? A deal with the unexpected. The will, that damned will, was the key. Evelyn hacked into Benjamin's safe one rainy afternoon, her fingers trembling as she inputted his birthday, a guess that paid off. Inside lay the document, a masterpiece of legalese. In the event of my death, my entire fortune goes to my charitable foundation, it read. My wife, Evelyn Schaefer, receives a one-time payment of $100,000. $100,000? Evelyn barked a laugh. The man was worth billions. The chef appeared in the doorway, a knife glinting in his hand. You weren't supposed to find that, he said, his voice flat. The mansion's clock tower tolled midnight, its chimes a countdown. Benjamin's illness had become a farce Evelyn could no longer endure. The staff's silence was a weapon. And the will? A slap in the face. But Evelyn wasn't done. She slid the Polaroids into her pocket, the will's pages into her coat. Secrets, she decided, were currency, and Benjamin's currency was about to crash. The mansion's walls were a gallery of whispered secrets. Evelyn's fingers trembled as she pried open a drawer in the library, its contents a jumble of yellowed letters and newspaper clippings. One headline caught her eye. Socialite found dead in burning building. Child survives. The photo showed a young Benjamin, his face smudged with soot, holding a toddler who bore a striking resemblance to Evelyn. You were there, she breathed, the room spinning. The gardener's earlier words echoed. He was a soldier, built his empire on blood. Blood and fire. The connection gnawed at her. Shocking secret. The notes multiplied like insects. The truth is in the basement. Beware the lawyer. She's not who you think. Benjamin denied writing them, his voice fraying at the edges. Someone's toying with you, he rasped, though his study's trash bin held half-crushed drafts of identical notes. The staff's whispers grew urgent. He's leading you into a trap, Mrs. Hale hissed, her polished nails digging into Evelyn's wrist. But Evelyn was past fear. The truth was a drug she couldn't quit. The billionaire's final game. The Polaroids in Evelyn's pocket burned like embers. Benjamin's first wife, Evelyn's double, smiled from the edges of history. The last photo showed them standing before a burning building, its flames licking the sky. The caption read, "Tragic fire claims lives of socialite and child." The child was Evelyn, or a version of her. The mansion's clock tower tolled, each chime a question. Who saved you? Who lied? Hidden truth behind the vows. The locked drawer. In Evelyn's bedroom rattled again, its contents now unmistakable, A stack of letters addressed to Evelyn Rose Schaefer, her real name. Benjamin had known all along. The letters were from a lawyer, demanding answers about her past. "We know you survived the fire," one read. "Now we need your testimony." Testimony for what? The staff's faces blurred in her mind. The chef's mentions of a hidden wing, the gardener's cryptic warnings. Benjamin's empire, she realized, was built on a corpse, and she was the ghost haunting it. She thought she knew him. Doubt was a razor Evelyn wielded with precision. Benjamin's kindness now tasted like ash. One evening, she confronted him in the study, the letters crumpled in her fist. "Who am I?" she demanded. Benjamin's gaze flickered. "A wife," he said too quickly. "A wife who's failing the test." The test, always the test. Evelyn's laugh was a broken thing. "You wanted loyalty," she spat. "But what you got was a woman who remembers fire." The mansion's secrets were a maze Evelyn was determined to navigate. The forbidden third-floor corridor called to her, its brass doorknob shaped like a serpent's head gleaming under moonlight. Inside, she knew, lay the answers, or the final piece of Benjamin's game. The staff's warnings faded into static. Survival, she realized, wasn't about running anymore. It was about standing still and letting the truth crash over her like a wave. The mansion's third-floor corridor swallowed Evelyn whole as she stepped inside, the serpent-headed doorknob cold in her grip. Moonlight streamed through arched windows, casting shadows that danced like skeletons. The air smelled of dust and forgotten truths. Her flashlight beam cut through the gloom, revealing a room untouched by time. A study frozen in the 1980s, its desk cluttered with yellowed newspapers and a typewriter that looked ready to bite. "What are you?" she whispered, her breath fogging the cold air. Shocking secret. Behind the desk, a safe gleamed like a promise. Evelyn's fingers flew over the dial, combination stolen from Benjamin's muttered dreams. The door hissed open, revealing stacks of documents tied with red tape. On top lay a file labeled Project Phoenix. Inside, passport photos of Benjamin flashed before her eyes. Different names, different faces. Victor Crane, Marcus Royce, Benjamin O'Connor. Each identity a layer of an onion. Evelyn's blood turned to ice. "You're not real," she breathed. The billionaire's true past. Deeper in the file, a military discharge paper caught her gaze. Psychological evaluation. Subject exhibits dissociative tendencies. Evelyn's mind reeled. Benjamin's war stories. They were real. But so was the blood. A newspaper clipping showed a younger Benjamin in uniform, standing before a burning building identical to the one in the Polaroids. "Hero saves child from fire. Witnesses report suspicious activity." The child in the photo, Evelyn's doppelganger. Her hands shook, hidden truth behind the vows. The final document was a bombshell, a DNA test report. Evelyn Rose Schaefer, biological, daughter of Margaret O'Connor, deceased. Margaret, Benjamin's first wife, the woman in the portraits, the woman who'd died in a car accident. Evelyn's vision blurred. Benjamin wasn't just her husband, he was her father. The mansion's walls seemed to sigh with confirmation, a deal with the unexpected. Evelyn stumbled back, the file clutched to her chest. The staff's warnings, Benjamin's tests, they all clicked into place. He'd married her not for convenience, but to control the daughter he'd abandoned. To atone for a past that haunted him, or to silence her. The chef appeared in the doorway, a cleaver glinting in his hand. "You weren't supposed to find that," he said, his voice flat. She thought she knew him. Doubt imploded into rage. Benjamin's kindness, his distance, it had all been a script. "I'm so sorry," he'd say, playing the broken man. But now, Evelyn's laugh was a crack of thunder. "You think I'll pity you?" she spat. The chef advanced, but Evelyn brandished the file like a weapon. "Tell your master I know his game." The mansion's clock tower struck 3, its chimes slicing the silence. Evelyn fled to her room, the documents burning her skin. Benjamin's true past wasn't just a secret, it was a prison, and she held the key. But keys could lock as well as unlock. Somewhere in the mansion, a phone rang. Benjamin's voice, distorted by static, filled the air. "You were never meant to survive." The mansion's third-floor corridor swallowed. Evelyn whole as she stepped inside, the serpent-headed doorknob cold in her grip. Moonlight streamed through arched windows, casting shadows that danced like skeletons. The air smelled of dust and forgotten truths. Her flashlight beam cut through the gloom, revealing a room untouched by time. A study frozen in the 1980s, its desk cluttered with yellowed newspapers and a typewriter that looked ready to bite. "What are you?" she whispered, her breath fogging the cold air. Shocking secret. Behind the desk, a safe gleamed like a promise. Evelyn's fingers flew over the dial, combination stolen from Benjamin's muttered dreams. The door hissed open, revealing stacks of documents tied with red tape. On top lay a file labeled Project Phoenix. Inside, passport photos of Benjamin flashed before her eyes. Different names, different faces. Victor Crane, Marcus Royce, Benjamin O'Connor. Each identity a layer of an onion. Evelyn's blood turned to ice. "You're not real," she breathed. The billionaire's true past. Deeper in the file, a military discharge paper caught her gaze. Psychological evaluation. Subject exhibits dissociative tendencies. Evelyn's mind reeled. Benjamin's war stories. They were real. But so was the blood. A newspaper clipping showed a younger Benjamin in uniform, standing before a burning building identical to the one in the Polaroids. "Hero saves child from fire. Witnesses report suspicious activity." The child in the photo, Evelyn's doppelganger. Her hands shook, hidden truth behind the vows. The final document was a bombshell, a DNA test report. Evelyn Rose Schaefer, biological, daughter of Margaret O'Connor, deceased. Margaret, Benjamin's first wife, the woman in the portraits, the woman who'd died in a car accident. Evelyn's vision blurred. Benjamin wasn't just her husband. He was her father. The mansion's walls seemed to sigh with confirmation, a deal with the unexpected. Evelyn stumbled back, the file clutched to her chest. The staff's warnings, Benjamin's tests, they all clicked into place. He'd married her not for convenience, but to control the daughter he'd abandoned. To atone for a past that haunted him. Or to silence her. The chef appeared in the doorway, a cleaver glinting in his hand. "You weren't supposed to find that," he said, his voice flat. She thought she knew him. Doubt imploded into rage. Benjamin's kindness, his distance, it had all been a script. "I'm so sorry," he'd say, playing the broken man. But now, Evelyn's laugh was a crack of thunder. "You think I'll pity you?" she spat. The chef advanced, but Evelyn brandished the file like a weapon. "Tell your master I know his game!" The mansion's clock tower struck 3, its chimes slicing the silence. Evelyn fled to her room, the documents burning her skin. Benjamin's true past wasn't just a secret. It was a prison, and she held the key. But keys could lock as well as unlock. Somewhere in the mansion, a phone rang. Benjamin's voice, distorted by static, filled the air. "You were never meant to survive." Evelyn's mind raced as she pored over the documents in her room, the walls of the mansion pressing in like hungry spectators. Benjamin's past was a tapestry of lies and stolen identities. Project Phoenix was no mere business venture. It was a government experiment in identity crafting. They wanted to create the perfect spies, the chef had muttered earlier, his voice trembling. Benjamin was their star pupil. The passport photos told the story, each name, each face, a thread in the tapestry of deceit. Shocking secret. Among the documents was a letter, its edges burnt as if hastily rescued from a fire. "My dearest Margaret," it began, "I'm sorry for what I've become. The man you married died in that fire. The one standing before you now is a construct, a weapon forged from guilt and necessity. Margaret, Evelyn's mother, the woman in the portraits whose smile never reached her eyes." The letter was dated 3 months before the car accident that claimed Margaret's life. She thought she knew him. Evelyn's hands shook as she connected the dots. Benjamin had been living a double life long before he married Margaret. The fire that killed her wasn't an accident. It was a cover-up. And Evelyn? She was the pawn born from a lie. The mansion's silence screamed confirmation. The billionaire's last wish. The final piece lay in a photo album hidden beneath the documents, images of Evelyn as a child, her face blurred in the background of Benjamin's business trips. She wasn't just his daughter. She was his insurance policy. The staff's warnings, the locked rooms, the will. It all pointed to one truth. Benjamin had orchestrated every moment of Evelyn's life to control her. But control for what? The mansion's clock tower told midnight, its chimes a countdown. Evelyn slipped the documents into a satchel, her mind racing. Benjamin's game was up, but the mansion had one more secret to yield. The vault in the basement, the one the gardener had mentioned, was her next target. Survival, she decided, meant knowing every card in the deck, and Benjamin had yet to show his hand. Evelyn's boots echoed through the basement corridor as she followed the gardener's cryptic map, the air thick with the scent of damp earth and secrets. The vault door loomed ahead, its surface etched with symbols that resembled serpentines. She traced the outline of a keyhole, the rusted key from the gardener burning in her pocket. "This is madness," she muttered, her breath fogging the cold air. But madness was all she had left. The billionaire's final game. The vault's interior was a shock, a fortress of steel shelves packed with evidence of Benjamin's dual life. Stacks of cash, passports, and a computer humming with encrypted files. Evelyn's fingers flew over the keyboard, her mind a whirlwind. "Look for Evelyn," the gardener had said. The search results spat out a folder labeled Daughter Project. Inside, a video file flickered to life. Young Benjamin, his face unlined by time, stared into the camera. "If you're watching this, I failed," he said, his voice trembling. "Evelyn, my daughter, was meant to inherit not my money but my truth. The fire that killed your mother. I started it. But you survived. And now I need to know. You love me, or the monster I've become?" She thought she knew him. Evelyn's world tilted. The marriage, the tests, the mansion. It had all been a trial. Benjamin wasn't just seeking loyalty. He was begging for redemption. The staff's warnings, his distancing acts, they were performances designed to crack her resolve. But Evelyn wasn't the girl he'd saved from the fire anymore. She was a woman forged in secrets, a deal with the unexpected. The video ended with a timestamp, the night of the fire. Evelyn's hands shook as she deleted the file. Benjamin's game had rules, but she'd rewrite them. Survival now meant exposing the truth, not just to him, but to the world. The staff's faces flashed in her mind, the chef's guilty glances, the gardener's veiled threats. They were all pawns. Somewhere in the mansion, a door slammed. Evelyn stuffed the documents into her coat, her mind racing. Benjamin's final test was over. But the real game was just beginning, and she held all the cards. The mansion's grand foyer was a storm of chaos when Evelyn returned, documents clutched to her chest. A stranger stood at the center, a woman with Margaret's face but sharper, her eyes cold as winter. "You must be Evelyn," she purred, extending a manicured hand. "I'm Victoria Crane, your half-sister." The word half-sister hung in the air like a slap. Evelyn's mind reeled. Benjamin had mentioned a sibling once, in passing, a falling out, a severed tie. But a sister? Alive? She married for survival. Victoria's presence was a blade wrapped in silk. She wielded legal jargon like a weapon, citing a clause in Benjamin's original will. "In the event of my remarriage, my eldest child inherits first." The staff melted into the background, their faces a mix of fear and fascination. Evelyn's pulse pounded. Victoria produced a birth certificate. Victoria Margaret Crane, daughter of Benjamin O'Connor and Eleanor Crane. Eleanor. The name scratched at Evelyn's memory. Benjamin's first love, mentioned in a drunken confession. The woman who'd walked away before he married Margaret. The billionaire's final game. Benjamin appeared from the study, his frame weaker than before. "Victoria," he rasped, his voice a mix of surprise and resignation. "You were supposed to stay hidden." Victoria's laugh was a shard of glass. "Plans change, Father, especially when your new wife starts digging." She turned to Evelyn, her smile venomous. "Did you really think he'd leave you his fortune? You're just a tool in his game?" Shocking secret. The room's oxygen seemed to vanish. Evelyn's fingers dug into the documents in her pocket. The DNA test, the letters, the video. Victoria noticed. "Ah, the truth he left you," she sneered. "Let me guess, he wanted you to expose him so I'd come out of the shadows." The pieces clicked. Benjamin's tests, his illness, the marriage. It had all been a trap for Victoria. But Evelyn wasn't part of the plan. She was the bait. The mansion's clock tower tolled, its chimes a dirge. Victoria advanced, her heels clicking like a death march. "You'll get your $100,000 and vanish," she said, echoing the will's stipulations. "Or you'll fight and lose." Evelyn's mind raced. The staff watched, the chef's cleaver glinting in his pocket, the gardener's key burning a hole in her coat. The game wasn't over. It was just getting bloody. The mansion's library became Evelyn's battlefield. Books toppled as she researched legal strategies, her eyes scanning pages on inheritance disputes and forged documents. Victoria, the ghost from Benjamin's past, was now a living threat, charming yet calculating, with a smile that hid a viper's bite. "You can't fight me," Victoria taunted during a tense breakfast, her gloved hand resting on a manila envelope labeled evidence. "I have lawyers, private investigators. You have, what? A orphan's charm." Evelyn's fork clattered to her plate. She married for survival. Desperation birthed courage. Evelyn recruited the staff, each with their own vendettas against Benjamin and Victoria. The chef, it turned out, was a former lawyer disbarred for ethics violations. The gardener, a tech whiz with a knack for hacking. "We're in this for revenge," the chef growled, sliding a forged deed across the table. "But you? You fight for the truth." The deed showed Benjamin had illegally claimed ownership of land that rightfully belonged to Evelyn's mother. The secret will. Evelyn's nights were spent decrypting Benjamin's files, the gardener's fingers flying over keyboards. They uncovered a digital copy of an older will, one that predated Benjamin's marriage to Margaret. "All my assets to my daughter, Evelyn Rose Schaefer," it read, witnessed and notarized. Victoria's birth certificate, it seemed, was a fabrication. Benjamin's eldest child didn't exist, not legally. The mansion's clock tower struck 2 in the morning as Evelyn stood in Benjamin's study, the older will in one hand, and Victoria's forged documents in the other. The staff watched from the shadows, their faces a mix of hope and dread. Outside, Victoria's car engine revved, a challenge. Evelyn adjusted the diamond necklace Benjamin had given her, now a symbol not of their marriage, but of her fight. The game was entering its endgame, and Evelyn was ready to play her final card. The mansion's grand foyer was a sea of tension as the lawyer stepped forward, his voice trembling like a leaf in the wind. "Mr. O'Connor's final will and testament," he announced, his eyes darting between Evelyn and Victoria. The air hung heavy, with anticipation, the staff frozen in place. Victoria leaned forward, her polished nails digging into the armrests of her chair. Evelyn's grip tightened on the documents in her lap, the older will, the forged deeds, the truth that could shatter everything. The lawyer cleared his throat. "To my wife, Evelyn Schaefer," Benjamin's recorded voice boomed from a speaker, his tone steady despite his failing health. "I leave not my fortune, but my apologies. You were never meant to inherit gold, but grace." The room erupted in gasps. Victoria's smile faltered. "To my daughter," the recording continued, "I bequeath the knowledge that truth is the heaviest burden and the greatest gift." Evelyn's heart raced as the lawyer revealed the final clause. "All assets are transferred to a trust, controlled by Evelyn Schaefer. Victoria Crane is barred from benefiting due to forged documents presented to this court." The room fell silent. Victoria's face contorted with rage. "This isn't over," she hissed, storming from the room. The staff erupted in murmurs, the chef pumping his fist in triumph. Evelyn stood, the weight of Benjamin's legacy pressing down on her shoulders. The game was over, but the battle had just begun. The mansion's clock tower tolled, its chimes a victory march. Evelyn faced a crossroads: walk away with the truth and the trust, or stay and dismantle the empire built on lies. The staff awaited. Her decision, their fates intertwined with hers. Outside, Victoria's car screeched away, a promise of revenge in its wake. Evelyn adjusted the diamond necklace, now a symbol of her strength, not Benjamin's possession. The future was hers to shape. Evelyn stood at the edge of the mansion's terrace, the morning sun painting the sky in hues of gold and blood. The trust fund was hers, a weapon forged from Benjamin's guilt and her own resilience. The staff gathered behind her, their faces a mosaic of hope and fear. Victoria's threat still hung in the air like a promise of war. "What now?" the chef asked, his voice breaking the silence. Evelyn's fingers traced the diamond necklace, its weight a reminder of her journey. From poor to powerful. The choice was a pendulum swinging in her mind. Walk away and reclaim the life she'd known before the mansion's gilded cages. A life of freedom, anonymity, and the echoes of survival. Or stay and dismantle the empire Benjamin had built on lies, using his fortune to expose truths that had festered for decades. The staff's futures, the gardener's whispers of buried evidence, the chef's hacked documents, all rested on her decision. She thought she knew him. Benjamin's voice echoed in her memory, his apologies, his tests, his love that had always been conditional. "You were my last gamble," he'd said in the video. "And you won." But winning what? An empire, stained with fire and deceit, or the chance to rewrite her own story. The secret will. The lawyer's words replayed in her mind. "The trust is yours to wield. Destroy it, donate it, or rule it." Evelyn's gaze drifted to the mansion's grandeur, its halls filled with secrets and souls seeking redemption. She could be a queen in this broken castle or a bird soaring beyond its walls. The mansion's clock tower began its morning chime, each note a question. Evelyn's answer lay not in the past, but in the legacy she'd choose to build. As she stepped forward, the diamond necklace catching the light, the world held its breath. So, what did you think of Evelyn's journey? Was the truth she uncovered what you expected? Or did the twists leave you on the edge of your seat? Share in the comments below what impacted you the most. Was it the shocking revelation of Benjamin's true identity, the hidden depths of the mansion's secrets, or Evelyn's strength in the face of betrayal? And let us know. Did you see the ending coming, or were you left wondering what could happen next? If you enjoyed this tale of mystery, deception, and resilience, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more compelling stories that will keep you guessing. Remember, the truth is often stranger than fiction, and Evelyn's story is just the beginning. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the mansion's shadowy halls. We can't wait to see you again for the next adventure.